But like, there's been regimes that have been way worse than fascism, like in classical fascism. If it wasn't for Nazism, we wouldn't have that view of fascism. Nazism did such horrors that like people will always view fascism as like something like insane. But like the fact is, like Roosevelt was praising Mussolini when he was in power for like the 10 years before Hitler was in power.
Yep. Hitler ruined many things. The Roman salute ruined because that's what Elon Musk was doing because he's a Caesarist and he was just trying to do the Roman salute. The pencil mustache and fascism as a political concept ruined all those things.
Maybe that's good.
Maybe.
Have you ever heard the saying called social democracy is the moderate wing of fascism? That's like the Stalinist.
I have heard that one before. Yes, indeed.
Well, you know, it has like a certain basis in reality.
Yes, because they're like going to ally with they ally with the capitalist class, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's the idea of like class collaborationism. The difference between them is like the social democrats are okay with like workers unions and
Right.
worker democracy and democracy, period. Fascism believe in totalitarianism.
Right. Well, as a moderate social democratic fascist, I actually agree with that and take them entirely.
You're listening to One Dime Radio. Become a patron at patreon.com/onedime to support the show and get access to extra content.
We think that ideology is something blurring, confusing our straight view. Ideology should be glasses which distort our view. And the critique of ideology should be the opposite. Like you take off the glasses so that you can finally see the way things really are.
When you talk about a revolution, most people think violence without realizing that the real content of any kind of revolutionary thrust lies in the principles and the goals that you're striving for, not in the way you reach them.
Philosophers call someone a relativist, by which they mean it's a person that holds that any view is as good as any other view. My simple response to that is this: no one holds that view. No one believes that every view is as good as every other view.
Welcome to One Dime Radio. Today I'm here with Ted Bundy.
Hello. It's me, famous serial killer, Ted Bundy.
Has everyone ever told you look like Ted Bundy?
That's a new one. I've heard a lot of the "you look like so-and-so," but no, I have not heard Ted Bundy yet.
Well, in all seriousness, I'm with Gregory Guevara, also known as Jreg, distantly related to Che Guevara, of course.
True.
Got some credibility in this community, man.
Yeah, it's in my blood. I don't know if I've ever explicitly and unironically said that, but that one's true.
Indeed, you heard it here.
People thought I made up the last name. They thought I was like LARPing. They didn't. So like people always see like Greg Guevara and they're like, why'd you name yourself after Che Guevara? I'm like, you realize that's a surname that people have. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think most people on the internet will know you as the person known as Jreg. Jreg, who are you? In every episode, we have to convince the audience. Why give a shit?
Yeah, true. Okay.
About who you are, what you have to say.
I'm an amorphous blob that takes the shape of whatever is most marketable to be the shape of at the time, and to advance a certain political cause of disrupting the status quo. And I do political reactionary slop sometimes, and I do music stuff sometimes, and I do all kinds of things. I talk about all kinds of things. So, I mean, I got the YouTube, I got the second channel where I talk about art, and yeah, that's basically what I do.
Yeah, I think you legitimately do warrant the title of artiste, and I think what is your sort of role in this internet sphere, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought about this for a bit, and I really do think you're the particular videos you did on centricide and different political ideologies
Mm-hmm.
sort of embody what I'll call like the Zoomer Zeitgeist.
Sure. Yeah.
And that like, you of course do these ironic and post-ironic, or we'll get into those sort of distinctions after,
Mm-hmm.
parodies of political satire of different political ideologies. And even though it's kind of like a parody, it does reflect the way a lot of Generation Z, the Zoomers, tend to interact with politics as a sort of like fandom, a set of niches, and
Funko Pops.
you've been like cited in a paper.
I've been cited in a few papers. Yes. Yeah. Mostly the irony stuff, talking about different, like a taxonomy of irony and how to conceptualize different, rhetorical and ironic frameworks, especially among young people online.
And
Yeah.
you're, of course, both of us are technically Zoomer cutoff point, probably like right at the Zoomer cutoff.
I have to be full Zoomer for this to work. I have to pretend to be. Yeah, I like a cusp. I'm a cusper. So you and I, we're Zillennials. But spiritually, I'm Gen Z. I'm trans Gen Z. That's much like how a mixed race person has to over-identify with one of their aspects of their race. I do that with Zoomers.
Yeah, I do think Zillennial is a kind of like generation of itself,
Yeah,
the subgeneration. Because like we're definitely not millennials. We don't eat avocado toast.
certainly not. I would never be a millennial.
And like there's a weird, I don't know how to explain it. I think we got the internet. We lived long enough to not have cell phones.
Yeah.
Real Zoomers get cell phones when they're kids.
Yes. Well, this is the Gen Alpha, of course, is you grew up when you were 3 with an iPad in front of your face. And yeah, I didn't get locked into an iPad till I was about 14. So that is a pretty big cultural difference in terms of how much brain rot it has been influencing your mind. But yeah, younger Zoomers for sure also have that as one of their identifying features.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think with Zoomers, it's like post-literate and post-ironic, and also like post-hope.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Do you think that this generation is like, it seems to be the most politically engaged generation in some ways, but also the most nihilistic and politically disillusioned?
Yeah.
Do you think that's like a contradiction, or like actually kind of is part of the same phenomenon?
I don't know. I think when you said that, the first thing that came to mind was maybe we are more nihilistic about things that people used to be hopeful for, but then hopeful in other areas of our life, or more as a general attitude. So yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, when we're talking about Gen Z as well, when we're talking about generations, very easy to go back and forth about all the different ways of defining it. And, it's especially with like, if we're talking about Gen Alpha, it's so amorphous because they're growing up right now. It's going to change like year to year, whatever, as we analyze Gen Alpha and what's happening with them. So Zoomers, we're older now. We're more defined. You could probably make the case that, yeah, there's a lot more nihilism. I think maybe the thing to say, and Brogan makes this point, Chad, is that Gen Z is just generally more extreme in the ways that we're hopeful. We're more hopeful in the ways that we're nihilistic. We're more nihilistic. Yeah, a little bit more extreme than our predecessors, perhaps. But I don't know. Again, we're positing wildly about vast swaths of people here. So
Yeah, it does. I really thought that for a while, that like Gen Z could either go communist or fascist or a mixture of the both.
yeah,
Or both, but I don't know. I think like part of it feels to me like, to what extent is a lot of the Generation Z approach to politics actually kind of just a goth phase, and we're all
yeah,
gonna become like boomer Democrats. Trotskyists are going to
yeah.
become Republicans.
Well, so
Maoists and radical leftists are going to become Democrats, and we're going
this
to
is
tell the next generation to vote Democrat.
this is what JJ says about the youths. He says, you guys are going through your extremist phase, and you'll go back to the center. But I remember when the millennials were young and they weren't fucking fascists or communists. That's new. So I think starting from a more extreme position, maybe as you age, you'll get more moderate, or you'll get more, closer to the center in a lot of ways. But I think because you're starting off from a further point, you're still going to end up more extreme than the previous generation. And so I also don't think that people who grow up thinking the status quo needs to be annihilated are going to just totally mellow out and become neoliberals. I think maybe they'll become maybe they will become slightly less extreme, slightly less radical once they start living out their ideals. Because, the Zoomers, they like to consume stuff in the format of a YouTube video with a bunch of autistic Funko Pops that they collect and they put on their shelves. Maybe that's how they get into it. Maybe they, in a pure idealistic sense, identify with anarcho-monarchism or something. And then maybe that meets reality. But, I don't think they're going to lose that the You know, we started off by forming their brainstem. That's like the core of everything that they are. Maybe we'll wrap some stuff around that, but I think that's going to be pretty deeply ingrained, that sort of disposition towards the way things are. But, you know, again, who knows? Let's check in 20 years, see when we're all crotchety boomers telling everyone to vote Democrat. Who knows?
It is funny that JJ McCullough, who you were referring to there, says that like, oh, well, when you're older, you'll become like more moderate. But I think he was always moderate. I don't think he was ever really radical.
No, I mean, I think he was slightly more right wing, perhaps, maybe a bit more reactionary when he was younger. But yeah, he's always been pretty much a status quo moderate. With his takes being more on his extremist takes were all about Canadian issues. And when it comes to like broader stuff like economics or culture, he was always very moderate. So, you know, he subscribes to the idea that people get more conservative as they get older. And he looks at leftists, like he would look at someone like maybe Joshua Citarella or the people that Josh interviews to be like, oh, they just got older. They actually had a conversation about this. They got older, so they became conservative. And when he says became conservative, he means became slightly less progressive culturally. And they're still economically left wing, but that doesn't matter. Economics don't matter. All that matters is culture. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think of this? So I think I recently saw this H3 video, which was all about Hassan, and he's making this big deal about like terrorism and radicalization and like this alt left pipeline.
Yeah.
And personally, I think a lot of the so-called communists online are more like nihilistic Bernie bros.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that partially not that much as a diss, more as like a kind of reality check on the Cold Warriors, because the Cold Warriors are like, oh, the communists. I don't know. I think I really the more I've talked to communists, they can't define what communism is, aside from like the obvious stateless, classless, moneyless society. But okay, like what do you actually want to do? It's being like, go China, go, or like debating the USSR and supporting like healthcare and social programs and right. It's like it Bernie, but like nihilistic. And I don't know to what extent does like being a communist just mean we want social democracy, but like to do it with force or like to be a little edgier about it.
I mean, if you want to create a stateless, classless, moneyless society right now, that's kind of the bind of being a communist. Is how are you gonna like what can you even imagine that? Because if I want to imagine a white ethno state, let me tell you, I could probably get that going. You know, I could probably make that happen. So there's a lot more achievable dreams, I think, in various different political ideologies. Like if you want to make an anarcho-capitalist network state, that shit's happening. You know, I mean, maybe it's not doing that great right now, but given another 10, 15 years, more and more billions and billions of dollars will pour into this stuff. That's a reality that people can achieve. I don't know how you're going to do the moneyless, classless, stateless society stuff. So if I were a communist, and I am, but I'm also a fascist, I would obviously advocate for the death of the West and China number one, and then maybe China does the socialism or something. So yeah, America bad. Pick it, American enemy out of the hat. Gaddafi, sure, fuck it. I'm a Gaddafi guy now. I don't know. Gaddafi's got is Gaddafi good? I forget if Gaddafi's allied with the West or not.
Gaddafi is like weirdly by the right and left usually considered to be kind of a benevolent despot.
Okay.
He's like, he's one of the better dictators.
Anyway, pick one of the anti-West dictators.
As far as dictators go.
Yeah. So anyway, that makes that I relate to the sort of what can you do? So you view that as a form of nihilism, though, because to me that doesn't strike me as nihilistic. It strikes me as pragmatic. Yeah, like in terms of I want to move towards socialism. Given the current state of affairs, my best for socialism are China, not America. So I'm going to bet on China. Like, isn't that more pragmatic than that? If it was nihilistic, wouldn't it be like there's no hope in anything? More of like Possadism, right? Let's just watch the world burn. More of like an anarchist thing.
I think China is pragmatic in terms of what it does for China.
Maybe not Russia.
Not so much Russia, no.
Yeah.
If like what China does can't just be copied and pasted here.
Right.
So I think the cheering of China more so reflects a desire to have a team to cheer for.
Right.
And
yeah.
It's a lack of imagination, I think. Like I'm not anti-China at all. I actually think what they did for their own country is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But it's like, what does that really do for us, you know?
Yeah, you know, I think this whole East-West thing is probably going to be a matter of like synthesis of some variety, and we might already kind of be there with getting more nationalistic, more isolationist,
Mm.
more. I mean, that is like what China does, right? Like, so
Canadian
I don't know.
national.
Yeah, maybe post Canadian American nationalism, the
What do
way
you think
the rate
Trump
things are
do?
going. I don't know. We're in like full psychosis mode. It's a fun time to be alive. He just said shit. I don't know. It's crazy. He's just saying shit, and then we all scramble. It's awesome.
Yeah, I've never seen the political spectrum in Canada be this unified.
Yeah, call a seething currently.
Yeah, because JJ wants us to become part of the US. Like,
Yes, and even Pierre Poilievre, who he loves, is like Canada first, and JJ's like Canada 51st, and Pierre Poilievre's like, nah. But anyway, who knows what the fuck's going on? Anyone telling you that they know what's going on right now is lying. It's a clusterfuck.
well, just now, as we're recording this conversation, the tariffs have been dropped.
Yes, they were delayed a month, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess temporarily dropped. And
And who knows what's going to happen in a month? So much shit's happening every day that like, who knows? It might just be a bargaining tactic or whatever.
yeah, I wonder what it is. Like, I wonder if it might be some tactic on Trump's part, or if like maybe Trump thought, maybe his advisors told him that like the price of fucking like McDonald's burgers are gonna go up by like $1. He's gonna lose the next election because like
Economic repercussions?
America had like 4% inflation or 5% inflation, and they're like, inflation
Yeah.
so bad, and we had it like way worse.
Yeah.
And America decided a whole election.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, I don't know. Anything we say at this point about what's currently going on is going to be irrelevant in like 2 days. So who knows?
True. Yeah, that is something about the internet, isn't it? Like the Nazi salute, the Elon Musk Nazi salute. What's your
Old news.
take on the Elon Musk Nazi salute as somebody who's a satirist?
Uh-huh.
People are, debating as to whether he was really serious
Yeah.
or just joking, or if he's just autistic, or what is it?
Well, you know, on one side we have that he's autistic and he just made an autistic slip up. On the other side, we have a Nazi. But what people are missing is that all Nazis are autistic. And so he's just an autistic Nazi, probably. I did a video explaining all of the different perspectives people had on it. And I opened that video with a bit of the, hand going into the chest thing, followed by the sea kale. And I was thinking, I shouldn't do that shit. But then I did. So yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't think he's like cold and calculated enough to have gone into that thinking I'm going to do a Nazi salute and then walk it back. And then I'm going to cause chaos. I think that's just, he probably just like flipped up. But does it matter? I mean, doesn't matter. That's my conclusion of that was like, he did a Nazi salute. Everybody took it as a Nazi salute. The only people that didn't take it as a Nazi salute were people on the moderate right. And because you called him a Caesarist. I liked that.
No, I said that about Trump. I actually did think he did a Nazi.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool.
I think Elon did do a Nazi salute, but I don't think that means like Trump is fascist.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I would agree. I also think we're moving into this very right-wing populist era globally. And it's probably going to be useful for us to, distinguish the difference between the words that we use to, describe people. Like, because calling Trump a Nazi, does that make any sense when he gained ethnic votes, like across the board, and won the popular vote, like, and he supports Israel? Like, it's weird. Maybe Nazi's not the right word.
He's a 90s guy from New York. Like, what he wants to do is snort coke with hookers and like make money and have a legacy. He's very about that legacy. I don't think he's kind of post-racial, and if he is racist, he's kind of bigoted, like in the way that like any kind of like old white grandpa might be.
Sure.
And
like, yeah,
like bigoted.
Yeah. And
like he wanted to run with Oprah back in the day. I think.
Yeah.
He was friends with Whoopi Goldberg too. Like really.
Yeah. I'm not getting like the dark right wing, echelons of Twitter. Like he's not really their guy. Although they might be surrounding him and they might be in his cabinet and whispering into his ear, which might be affecting certain things. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if some neo-reactionary, like very forward-thinking INTJ type was like, we have to annex Canada and this is how we're going to do it because the climate change we're going to need the natural resources. Like who the fuck knows? He had 4 years to plot and scheme and put the right people around him. But anyway, I'm not a Trump political commentator. I'm just here for the ride. So
Well, yeah, like I think with Elon it's different because Trump, he's a '90s guy from New York. Elon Musk grew up in South Africa, like
right,
a white guy in South Africa. It's like a kind of if it was more believable who's a white supremacist, I'd say Elon is. It's highly plausible. Does that mean
yeah.
nothing's gonna happen? I don't think so. But I mean, like in terms of the salute, yeah, I think like autistic Nazi they go together. Hitler like trains. Elon likes rockets. So
Are we doing the thing where we look at past historical figures and diagnose them? Hitler, autistic. No, I think no, here's what I would say. I think Hitler was an empath.
everyone who I've ever heard who said they're an empath is like has BPD.
I think he had BPD. I think he was an empath with BPD. I think he had a lot of empathy, and you can't have empathy without having an outgroup, which you have an equal amount of hatred towards. So Napoleon, a narcissistic personality disorder. Now I don't know. I think we could do this all day, but yeah,
That does seem like a Zoomer tendency, like
it is.
diagnosing things.
Well, so this brings us, this brings us
Yeah.
back to the Zoomer Zeitgeist. It's just we love our categorizations. I think
Yeah.
partially because the world's very confusing, especially when you're growing up in the world and trying to understand the world, trying to understand the complexities of political thought. And also I've been brain fucked by my iPad. Like I'm not gonna read about all this shit. I'm gonna watch a YouTube video explaining in 1 hour and 30 minutes all of the different variants of communism on the One Dime channel. So that's what I'm gonna do.
Preview there for the next vid. Yeah, like so that is like I don't know, call it like autistic trait, whatever it is, but like Gen Z just has an obsession with endless categorization.
Yeah.
And like that's not just in the political field, but at the level of mental illness. I mean,
Yep.
people are diagnosing themselves these days on like TikTok.
Mhm.
And you've covered, I mean, both topics on your channel. You
Yep.
see them intricately connected is like,
Yes. Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, it's the same thing. And while the political world is confusing, it can be helpful to make little characters out of them, see how they interact. And then you get to interact with them as fiction, which is how we're comfortable with interacting with things as people who have less and less reason to engage with reality because we're so online. So it's comfortable to engage with things as fandom. And also by finding fandoms, how do we connect when in communities? I like Star Wars. You like Star Wars. I don't know. This is millennial, but like, I like this show. You like this show. We can talk about that. Oh, I like anarcho-monarchism. You like anarcho-monarchism. We can talk about that. And I'm autistic. You're autistic. Incredible. And so, yeah, you can form communities around these labels. And do these labels prop up the psychiatric industry? Yeah. And that's good for them. So congratulations. And congratulations, pharmaceutical industry. And I have attention deficit disorder and you have attention deficit disorder and we got to get on the Vyvanse. And so that's how it works now.
yeah, it's like, you can find like self-diagnosis to sort. I see like pronoun culture and
Yeah,
ideology labels and yeah, like mental illness diagnosis is sort of like all kind of related.
sure. Yeah,
Because like people will sometimes want to put their ideology in their bio, kind of like an extension of the he, him, they, whatever. It's like a very obsession with like these fixed categories. But sometimes I think when it comes to that diagnosis, to what extent is it also like in the one you just mentioned practical? Because like you mentioned the like ADHD, Vyvanse, of course, the rate at which people are on study drugs has gone up enormously.
yeah.
Extent is that just because we're like the most capitalistic generation? We need that techno capitalist. We're just like, I have ADHD now, so I just want to be as
0%.
possible.
0%. You have a sickness. You have an illness, and I'm giving you glasses that are going to help you see the world for how it is. And also it'll make you a more efficient conduit of capital in your job, which requires you to put in, you get exactly as much money of effort you put out, and that requires you to stare at a screen 16 hours a day. And that's where all of us are moving in all of our lives, because you also need a side hustle on top of your 9 to 5. So yeah, 0% has nothing to do with capitalism. It has all to do with the fact that you have a serious illness. You're sick one time, and I'm sick. And we need the stimulants like a diabetic needs insulin. So I hope I've given you some comfort here in our difficult lives.
Do they have a medical cure for being like too autistically into communism?
No, actually, autism has there's no med they can put you on for that one.
Autism just for like being into communism.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, like, I think a political ideology, I think a special, like for autistic people, a special interest being politics. That's like actually very common. And you'll see plenty of people with autism in extremist communities on the left and right. I should say it's not just communism, but there's probably some subvariant of autistic person that gravitates towards communism. I feel like that kind of person would, be very interested in reading a lot about it though, and like getting really deep into it, the theory. They start believing in Lysenkoism, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maggot communism.
Yes, indeed.
That's a Zoomer ideology if there is one.
Yep.
Well, they used to have a cure for it. It was called going to the church.
Yep. Go to church. I mean, maybe try it. Autists in the audience, go to church right now. The problem is, then they go to church and then they become redeemed Zoomer.
Right.
And they start autistically categorizing all of the subvariants of Christianity.
No, they just need to go to church. They need to go read Jesus to tell them not to be socialist.
I gotta read Jesus. And then they read Jesus and they're like, hold on a second. He's not telling me not to be socialist here.
No rich people in heaven?
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta wait, no, don't actually read the Bible. No.
No, only read the Curse of Ham. That's the only part you should read.
The Curse of Ham. Which explain that one to me.
The racist part.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
The one racist part, even though there's all this other part from Paul, for example, which is that anybody can become a Christian regardless of race or creed or whatever. But yeah, it seems like we have also a kind of, aside from the autistic categorization, we have a kind of, to use these terms colloquially, a sort of schizo character of
Yeah.
Gen Z in sort of shifting between ideologies.
Yeah.
Right. Like kind of trying out one, like it's like a phase, like a costume, role playing perhaps.
Yeah.
And kind of like it's maybe a form of enjoyment, or also maybe it's just because of how available it all is. But is there a silver lining to this? The fact that like maybe we have less fixed identities,
Yeah.
less stable ideologies. Maybe that's good for like open-minded thinking.
I have no point said this was a bad thing. This is objectively a good thing. These are ideologies, perspectives that are helping us shift our Overton window in various different directions and think about the world in different ways, which is what we desperately need more of. So I think it's overall a good thing.
Yeah. So one big characteristic that people associate with this generation is irony, but people, I think, more accurately say post-irony.
Sure.
Now, what are the differences between those things? Because, of course, you flirt with these ideas and kind of concepts in your satire.
Yeah.
What is the difference for like older people who are like, what the fuck is
For the boomers in the audience.
Yeah. I actually have you surprisingly.
Interesting. Okay. So,
So I didn't show my face for so long.
Yeah, interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
you didn't want to reveal that you were young?
Yeah, exactly. I don't like anything if you're like below 30 is like, oh, you're a little child.
Yeah, you lose.
I want to build credibility first, so now I have the OGs.
Right.
I'm like, fuck you, if they're gonna play ageism with me. But
Okay.
I have my average audience age is like, I think 25 to 40.
25 to 40. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I used to be the youngest one, like 18 to 24. And then like 5 years later, they all seem to have grown up with me. And now it's the same 25 to 30 something. Okay. So irony is like standard classic irony is something that everyone's familiar with. And when you do verbal irony, it just comes across as sarcasm. So I'm saying the opposite of what I mean. So if I say like, I don't know, you're looking like shit today, but I actually mean you look great, then that's irony. I'm just saying the opposite of what I mean. That's very easy to parse. And also everybody with a conscious brain knows what I'm saying when I say that. I'm not really signaling. Maybe I'm signaling like, maybe if someone overhears me saying like, hey, one dime, you look like shit today, then they'd be like, Greg, that was really mean of you. Why'd you say that? Because they don't understand that I'm saying the opposite of what I mean when I'm actually complimenting you. But if I hate you and I say, one dime, you're looking like shit today, but I mean it, that's a bit more complicated, right? Because now it sounds like I'm being ironic, and I could be using that tone of voice to deflect criticism. So I could be saying, like, if someone's like, Greg, that was really mean. I was like, I was being ironic, don't you know? But I actually did mean it. So what we start dipping into scenarios when online, there's no accountability for what I'm saying. I can say whatever I want. But if someone wants to come for me and I'm sort of predicting what their reaction is going to be to whatever I'm saying, I can just say, well, I was being ironic. It's called Schrodinger's douchebag. And so I could talk for a million years about all the different applications of irony and speculate why we're so ironic as a generation. That's kind of a broad overview. Post-irony is the return to sincerity from an ironic position. And what I call meta-irony is I say, you look like shit today. And I have no idea what I mean. I don't know how you look. Maybe I haven't even seen you today. And who knows? Who the fuck knows what I mean? I don't even know what I mean. So those are sort of all the different layers. And then of course I can get fuck you with it and say level 5 mega irony is when I double subvert the triple subvert. I don't know. You can get as ridiculous as you want about it. But those are just sorts of heuristics I've used to like try to define, describe, and articulate some of the messages and messaging that Gen Z uses, and the younger generations will continue to use.
So is Gen Z like more post-irony than irony? Because people often use the term irony poisoning.
Yes. So
seems
yeah,
sort of post-irony.
I think that sometimes we use post-ironic to mean both meta-irony and post-irony. So I'll just continue the conversation, just like post-irony is anything where it's like not just traditional standard irony. So if you're a Gen Z person and you're trying out all these different ideologies, these worldviews, maybe you want to try out anarcho-capitalism. And so you start talking like an anarcho-capitalist and say, I love landlords, something like that, right? And then you keep trying that out. One of two things is going to happen. Well, one of three things. One, you just remain ironic forever and you're just totally nihilistic about it. Or two, you unironically become an anarcho-capitalist. You're like, I'm going to go to Praxis and hang out with the network state people. And then you exist in the network state and you're like, okay, I found my community. Actually, I like this. And also I have a bunch of money. So I'm big chillin' now. And this actually identifies with me. Or three, you shift into a different ideology. Maybe you go into minarchism or libertarianism. Maybe you fucking become a communist. I don't know. So because we're living on the internet, and the internet is a place where there's very little friction between ideas and very little accountability for the identity that you inhabit. If you're a forum poster, you can change your ideology from day to day. There's a lot more incentive to be ironic. And also it comes when people are very hostile towards you for specific beliefs that you have, it becomes a necessary defense mechanism to have a bit of a layer, a shield up in front of you in case you say the wrong thing. Maybe you're worried about getting fired from your, normal government job. Who knows, right? Then you have a bit of plausible deniability. And so I don't think irony is a bad thing. I think it's a necessary thing. I think it helps ideas communicate better. And I don't know. I mean, I could talk forever about irony, but
it's certainly a feature of the generation. Like Jean Baudrillard loves to use irony in his writing, but from my hunch, seeing a lot of the ways people treat ideology and kind of go about their lives, like Zoomers posting online, and of course that's a big factor. Like when you're online, you can kind of just say whatever because there's no consequence if you're not going to be persecuted for that, or you're not held to account for that. You can just say whatever. And it's like LARPing, right? Like you're able to just kind of say, "Oh, we're going to do a protracted people's war in Ottawa, or wherever, protracted people's war against the government." Like no one's gonna, care. Thing that's gonna come out of that. Where it's like, you do that shit in fucking Egypt, you're gonna get slaughtered. But
it's a bit of a first world luxury, indeed.
Yeah. No, what do you mean? Like, this is the cops here? Cops here are the worst in the world. All cops are bad, but here are the worst.
Yes.
Cops here are the only racist cops.
Indeed. That's a little something we like to call irony that you were employing there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or post-irony.
Or meta-irony. Oh, that's exactly. It's and when you're using that style of speech, the obvious criticism is you're just polluting the discourse with a bunch of noise. But, ideally that sort of ambiguous position that you occupy mentally, ideologically, collapses into something eventually. And, if it never does, then you might just, like we said, before, maintain being the most nihilistic generation or whatever. So
So to what extent is like irony a cope to avoid actually tying oneself to an ideology that, if you're proven wrong, for example, there's kind of psychological consequences with that. And also real life consequences if one is to act on that ideology, like join a movement. Is irony a kind of form of detachment and a cope in that way? And perhaps also you could say post irony or like, doing the thing where it's like saying it in an ironic way, but you're actually serious. A way to kind of like avoid accountability by being like, "Oh, I was just joking, bruh.
yeah,
I was just
definitely.
doing a salute, bruh."
Exactly. The Nazi salute was ironic, Your Honor. Yeah, definitely. It definitely can be. So irony is a tool. It's a tool, and it can be used in all kinds of different ways. But when we're saying stuff like this, what we're actually observing is people are using this tool to avoid accountability or something like that. And yeah, I mean, for sure, you can use the tool to avoid accountability. You can use the tool to remain in an amorphous state instead of committing to anything. And in a world where we could make some arguments that like we have less reason to commit to things now more than ever, less reason to commit to a relationship, less reason to commit to one career. Maybe that's because there's just more inherent instability with all of these things. Less reason to commit to an ideology and be proven wrong and be clowned on the internet. So for sure, irony can also be used to connect people. For sure, it can be used as like an inner language that I'm sure the any different political group has certain lingo and languages and things that they're ironic about that signal to their group that they're a part of that group. And so that's a way of using that as signaling an in-group and speaking in a way where if people outside of the in-group heard you, like, what, like Lyshenko, you think genes aren't real? You think you believe in Lyshenkoism? And then, maybe they're just talking like somewhat ironically, somewhat jovially about that. And then you get triggered. That's also fun. So I did an ironic rave in Toronto, and there was the bartender there was doing cocaine the whole time, and he didn't get any of it. And he was so pissed, and he was like yelling at us, and it was kind of funny because like he didn't get any of the irony. And so I don't know, it made the people who did get the irony appreciate it more because they were like within that shared culture. It's a way of like when irony and being disaffected and being disconnected becomes your culture, you can in turn use post irony to connect people via that culture, right? So
Yeah, like a kind of inside joke, but like a double form of communication, I guess.
right, yeah.
Yeah, there's a okay. I was just thinking about this when you were talking about like using this sort of lingo that is internal to the group, but it can become like serious. Okay, I don't know if you ever heard about this. This was a scandal on like communist YouTube back in the day,
Hmm.
and I only heard about this long before I ever like, familiarized myself with this circle. There's a certain fringe Stalinist YouTuber that goes by the name of European Country Bolshevik.
Hmm.
And there was like this guy is like super Stalinist, total defends whatever Stalin does, serious on that level. But he also kind of like somewhat LARPy things where talk about like you're a revisionist and counter-revolutionary. But like there was a scandal that happened in this guy's Discord where he was chatting like role play with his one of his moderators, I think, but someone in his Discord who is a underaged woman, and they were like chatting on the Discord, and he was doing role play where he was like pretending to be an NKVD officer, doing like weird kinky shit like punishments to her, and it's like, yeah, send me to the gulag, and it was like, yeah, weird sexual fetishization of gulags.
Yep.
That's really
Yeah,
weird. No, it was like,
sounds about right.
yeah, but it's so funny because to come from that guy, right? Like if it was just anybody, everyone would be like, oh, yeah, of course, that's being ironic. But like, it starts off, it was like the opposite in many ways. Start off like serious Stalinist, but then doing like this ironic role play stuff. But it's like not really ironic given his like,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I don't think he was. It sounds to me he wasn't being ironic, and I think our sniff test is pretty good for like figuring out what people believe, even if they're trying to be ironic. Like when you are on the internet for long enough, it's pretty hard to maintain any level of an infinite mystique. If you keep making Stalinist points a million times when you get outed as a Stalinist role player, it makes sense. I'm not going to assume you're being ironic there. In the same way where like people look at what Sam Hyde says and they're like, who knows what he believes? It could be anything. And then for 15 years straight, he's being like, the Jews control everything. White people need a homeland. Like, no fucking shit that the guy is on the right at the very least, the far right, right? So I don't think that's a mystery. I don't think that's like, I don't think we're scratching our heads over that. But some people will still be like, well, who knows? People do this with me as well. I'm like, the things that I basically every video I make has a point to it in one way or another. I made a video about Canada being like super badass and like, we're going to destroy America. And, I made that video because the obvious point there is that if Canada fights America, it's not going to probably go too well for us. And so, yeah, I don't know. That's a clear point. You can disagree with it, but like, I'm obviously making a point with the satire. And people can sometimes just be like, oh, who knows what this guy's talking about.
That's true. Yeah, no, I had a okay, so this is when long before I had met you,
Mm-hmm.
what my impression of what your politics was?
What's that?
So first I thought you were Nazgul
Right.
because you did the impression of like the Nazgul and both of the Tanky and the Nazi like way too well.
Yep. Yeah.
And Nazgul is kind of like the ultimate embodiment of like horseshoe theory and like anti-centrism.
Yeah.
But then after I thought, because you know what I noticed? Okay, and you're so good at like parodying every position
Mm-hmm.
and being kind of like ironic about every position. There's one position where you would always just be like straight up
Right.
climate change.
Climate change. Yes.
Or convincingly parodied like being a denialist.
Yeah.
Climate change is like, yeah, get with the program, guys. What the fuck are you doing?
I think, well, I've always been sincere about climate change because the way I use irony is if I am not 100% sure about something, I will be ironic about it. But there are a few things I, bang on my channel sincerely about all the time. One of which is community and the importance of community. One of which is climate change. And I don't think that is necessarily something, I think this is something that is just a base reality fact that we should probably think about. And also, if you're a right winger, you should think about climate change because the right wingers who are intelligent know climate change is real. And then there are people who are circulating Trump right now, like the neo-reactionary type saying, think about climate migrant. What are you going to do about that? Like there's actionable, tangible things that a right winger should and is doing in direct response to climate change, actually. So
yeah, I've thought about that. Like, why doesn't the right, especially the anti-immigrant right, like actually give a shit about climate change because it's so obvious that that's going to cause more migration.
I think my personal pet theory is just that it is possible to act on climate change by pulling out of the global world and shutting your borders and killing migrants at the border, and also saying it's not real. Let's keep drilling, blah blah blah, make things worse because then you get to like sort of do one thing with one hand and another thing with the other hand. Yeah. Drill, there will be drill, plus pull out of the global economy. Something like that.
Yeah, it seems like Meloni, the leader of Italy, weirdly is one of the more like sensible right wingers, like far right leaders that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Because she seemed to like, so she's like genuinely like super anti-immigrant, Italy first, Italy for Italians type
Yeah.
leader. But she kind of realized like, oh, okay, well, if we want less migrants, we want to address the causes of why people are leaving,
Mm-hmm.
coming here. So then she just it was like kind of went full circle where she was like, "Oh, we should oppose imperialism," and she started criticizing Macron in France, saying that like France owes reparations to Africa.
Interesting. Wow. That's
Yeah,
that's the racism horseshoe theory in action.
Yeah.
You're so racist, you start getting anti-racist.
yeah, literally. I mean, like if only Le Pen had that logic, because Le Pen is,
Mhm.
you know, anti-Muslim but super pro-Israel, and it's like, well, if you keep bombing them, they're gonna leave, and you're
Yeah.
gonna have refugees. Melody is like, no, that's like Israel should stop what it's doing because we're gonna get climate refugees. I don't know. It's like a horseshoe theory thing, kind of is like anti-Semitic Zionism.
Anti-Semitic Zionism. Yep. Yep.
You did a video on that.
Yep.
That
Mainstream.
had a point.
Yep. You do not, those are separate spectrums, Zionism, anti-Zionism, and anti-Semitism and philo-Semitism. Different spectrums for sure.
Now you were definitely making a point with that video, the anti-Semitic Zionism one.
Yeah. And even in the videos when I'm making less of a clear point, I'm trying to articulate kind of my thinking around the point rather than maybe just explicitly saying one thing. That was more the Elon Musk video where I'm talking about all the different perspectives people have on it and then trying to reconcile those into a framework of saying, he's an autistic Nazi. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, like in each of your sort of skits, there's a kernel, a rational kernel in each of them, even the old ones. I mean, I remember one of the ones that sticks out to me is like there was I think it was like a left one where like the bread tubers just it was a bread tuber just gets like richer and
Right.
richer
Yes.
and richer, and at the end they're like, "I'm a libertarian."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like Red Scare. There you go.
Hmm.
Once your Patreon tax bracket is in the six figures, libertarianism time, right wing time. Yeah,
Right, Clinton's house.
exactly. Yeah. Yes. That's an old classic. Friend of the studio. She'll come by soon, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, she's goaded. You know, she has some points.
See, I hope to get Hillary Clinton by the studio soon, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I was invited to Hillary Clinton's studio.
Oh wow, awesome! I've got some schematics to send you.
It was an island.
Oh yeah, yeah. Hmm. Hopefully, it sinks due to climate change and all the children just swim away.
And it was an island, and very specifically at a pizza parlor.
I'm gonna start the most suspicious. Let's say I have a bunch of money. I'm gonna buy an island, and I'm gonna get a bunch of like refugee children there, and there's gonna be like cheese pizza everywhere. But actually, nothing suspicious will happen. Like it'll just be like they'll all be really happy. Be like, come by my island. What is wrong? Want to come by my island?
You just have like a Ferris wheel, cheese,
Yeah.
pizza, like get music, but like it's just like summer camp. Nothing bad going on.
I'll have statues of Ball everywhere. And we're like, what the children love Ball, and they're like, yeah. They're like dancing around the demon statues. Yeah.
Jreg irony poisoned. People have said that about you.
Is Jreg irony poisoned? I think so. I think the anti-status quo perspective was originally more of a bit that I kept doing until I justified it more than I justified any of my other positions. And then I started to believe sincerely. And I do get excited by extremist perspectives. Like, when the Praxis people are building network states, that excites me. And I'm interested in their perspective. And when the ACP people get together and they say, we want to do Nazgul shit, that excites me too. So I don't know. Yeah. I would say I am irony poisoned. And I'd say irony poisoning the way I describe it is irony poisoning is what happens when irony stops becoming a tool and starts becoming a part of your identity. So irony should be used like a hammer, but you shouldn't have to pick up the hammer and have it meld with your hand. And then that's the only tool you know how to use, is being ironic all the time. If you can't drop it at any point, then that might interfere with you being able to do stuff like build community and such, right? Like if I was, if you hung out with me and I was trolling you epically all the time, I don't think that would be very conducive to us being friends or hanging out or building what we've built, right? So yeah, I think that's probably what I would say irony poisoning is in a very concise way. It's just when it stops being a tool you use and starts using you.
Right. I mean, that seems like something you've kind of been grappling with throughout your YouTube journey. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen it in your videos, like kind of like over time, there being like a more overtly serious message,
Mhm.
even behind like the bit. I mean, you say there's always a message. I think in the sense that like you incorporate the perspectives of the ideologies you're like satirizing.
Mhm.
But like, I mean, over time, you can kind of tell like you did a bunch of videos that were just like straight up opinions, and
Mhm.
people were still like, is he serious?
That's where I want them.
Like, when
That's
when he went on Destiny, I
yeah.
noticed that was a kind of like weird
Yeah.
sort of moment.
It's because Destiny and his entire fan base is autistic. The autistic people interact with me in a very specific way, where I am whatever character I'm playing, they have no like media literacy. Like they can't get past layer 1. So layer 1 is all they see. Well, the schizophrenic interfaces with me, and they see layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they see layer 6, 7, and 8, which don't even exist. And they're like, I knew it. You think oh yeah, they just say some schizo shit at me. So yeah, I think the status quo, the Destiny fan base is probably very. I think they might be more atomized and irony poisoned than they even know. I've actually never seen someone less human than Destiny.
Yeah, for real, man.
Yeah.
I was gonna say because like the internet really just ruins people's brains. I think,
Yeah.
especially streamers.
Yeah,
Like,
streamers especially for sure.
with like, I'm not saying this as general of all streamers, but obviously, like, some are more fucking weird than others. But like,
Mhm.
what is it with? It just seems to me like there is just like weird shit with streamers and like sex scandals and just weird stuff that props up. Like, why?
I should say my issues with the Destiny are my issues with basically every streamer. I just think it's a degenerate lifestyle. I think it makes your brain work in a certain way when you're performing all the time. You're more of a machine than you are a person outside of the machine. Imagine this podcast was 12 hours and you did it every day. What the fuck? That would be insane. But that would change your brain in a certain way. Yeah. So I think, socially I advocate for more silence, more contemplation, more time off of it and being less. But, I also think that it's inevitable that it creeps more and more into your life. And so I don't know. I like resisting the inevitable because it gives me more things to complain about. But
Hmm.
I don't know. Every streamer I've met, they've been so mentally fucked, I like Vosh. I like Vosh actually. I hung out with him when I was doing Progressive Victory canvassing. But, I was talking to that guy and I was like, what are you going to do after, like go out with your friends or something? And he's like, I'm going to go back to my stream. There's no social experience like it. Holy fuck, dude. they're also fucked. It's so bad. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, it seems like it's something that's unique to streamers. I think with streamers, it's because they're just talking so long and they say dumb shit.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't even imagine already doing 2 podcasts in a day tires me. Like,
Yeah.
I only do that, like, once a week or less. I can't even imagine doing, like, that amount of recording the whole
Mhm.
day, let alone have it unedited.
Yeah. Now I'm actually doing it for 15 years and only debating people while playing Factorio on Vyvanse while doing something else on a second screen. That shit's going to do something to you, I think. But it's also going to only attract specific people who, have that sort of mentality anyway. So chicken and egg, I could speculate all day about the streamer psychology, but I also think it's like very low form of art and it takes a lot less thought about what you're saying and when you're saying it. And that's why every streamer has, if they're so dopamine fucked, it's a disaster. But yeah, I mean, I'm not.
It's definitely not art at all.
Yeah,
I don't think what I do in this pod is art. Like, I think my
yeah.
art.
I don't think my like the Horseshoe Theory podcast, that's not art. That's like that's just some entertaining slop content that I'm cranking out mostly because Brogan wants to. So,
But Jreg, the videos are art.
well, yeah, because there's thought that goes into it. There's a point that's being made. There's a craft element to it in terms of my writing, my delivery, the editing, blah blah blah. Some stuff is more artistic than others. If we're making a political ideology tier list, probably more on the slop end of things. If I'm doing like a musical album, which is talking about love or whatever, and on a very high level, using all these different love frameworks, it's probably like more art. But
what is art in the
great.
age of the post fractured internet generation?
Art is whatever I like, and if I don't like it, it's not art. That's the common critique of if you watch my stuff and I say something you disagree with, then you're like, that's bad satire, even though it's very clear what I'm saying, and you just don't agree with it. I don't know. In terms of like the fracturing out of culture, different art pieces, a good piece of art communicates a message, and so there's all kinds of different communities that probably respect different forms of art, and there's different tastes. And then there's there's that, but then there's another scale of just like, is it objectively good art or objectively bad art? Gokanaru making a video about Sneeko, that's like pretty high concept, high quality art where a lot of effort and work is put into it, a lot of research, but also a lot of like extra YouTube stuff where he's going into Sneeko's community, infiltrating Sneeko's community, getting Sneeko to react to his video live. That shit's like, that's art mogging someone who hasn't made a good documentary in like 4 years, right? So yeah, I don't know. I think if the art is quality, people that'll shine through regardless of your political perspective and stuff. Sometimes though, you're so politically trapped in whatever worldview you're in that you can see a really great piece of art, but because that's a message you don't agree with, you can't accept that. You don't like it, and then you say that's not art. But yeah, never ask me what art is again. I refuse to answer this question.
Art is only what furthers the class struggle.
Right, I forgot. Art is only what furthers the class struggle. Oops, I didn't further the class struggle with that one.
You have to only draw a painting of big strong man with hammer.
Mm.
That's art. Or anything else? Or if it's of Stalin.
Maybe I'd be happier if I just drew Stalin over and over again all day.
People were happy under communism because they got their food, and that's what else do you want other than that? Why complain? You can't complain. If you complain, you're bad, mentally
I
ill.
I think the freedom afforded to me by Western liberal society has been a great pain. So I'd like to try that Stalin stuff now.
Yeah, okay, so that kind of weirdly relates to irony in my view because look,
Right.
this year I finished reading Francis Fukuyama's End of History.
Mm-hmm.
I had it in my top 10 book list. A lot of people are really surprised why I put that there because like
Right.
Fukuyama is kind of like a boogeyman on the left.
Mm-hmm.
People don't really know what he actually said. They think he just said like, "Oh, the end of history happened. Good communism fell. The end of story. West
Yeah.
best." But it's actually an incredibly sophisticated, like Hegelian history of the world.
Mm.
That book is very interesting, and like I still think we're in the end of history,
Mm.
and it's part of I think irony and our flirtation with ideologies is part of a way to kind of, in a way, part of a way to kind of cope with the fact that we're still in the end of history.
Right.
Because, like, the fact is a lot of people, like, we don't really have an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have China at most, maybe, but, like, is that really like, it's like a better form of capitalism, maybe, for China. But, like, in terms of alternatives, Soviet communism is not coming back. And you see, like, people are still debating that, like, they're getting into Marxism, Leninism, or council communism, Trotskyism, old 20th century ideologies that aren't that relevant
Mm-hmm.
anymore. And they're trying to like, oh, copy and paste that here, or they'll like, yeah, adopt these kind of things. It's a way to have to cope with the fact that I think we're still literally in Fukuyama's world.
Mm.
Fukuyama though doesn't actually think that anymore. Fukuyama thinks the rise of far right populism is challenging liberal democracy, and that socialism ought to come back. And by socialism, he really means like moderate social democracy, because like, or else the far right's going to take over. But I don't know. I actually kind of think like the far right, in a weird way, is also kind of like contained opposition, because even if you look at the places where the far right's taken over, they haven't really radically changed the regimes all that much. They just kind of maybe were like more anti-immigrant and were like kind of more draconian,
Mm-hmm.
authoritarian. But like, like all the far right parties in Europe, none of them left the EU.
Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, maybe it's easier for, well, our good mutual friend Rudyard, what if old hist, he makes this point
Ah,
in a lot of his videos, which is that first world societies will become fascist, where third world societies will become communist or something like that. It's like it's just a lot easier for a neoliberal world to pivot into right wing populism than it is to go left wing populist, I guess. I don't know.
really? So actually, he said that.
Yeah, I mean that's a surprising take from a right winger, but yeah, he makes that point, and uh,
Damn,
yeah.
that's horseshoe theory. Because there's like a part of the far left who always says that. Like, there's a part of the far left, what I'll call like the third worldist left, or the nihilistic, like anti-American. What I mean by anti-American is not like anti-imperialist, because
Yeah.
anti-imperialism good,
Hmm.
but like
Third
anti-American,
worldists, yeah,
it's
Maoists.
the idea that America is just like inherently reactionary, no matter what
Yes,
it.
it's beyond saving. Like it's too the capitalism is too interwoven into its very being.
Yeah, like they actually say the same thing. They say
Mm.
that, well, the third world is going to be where communism happens. And they kind of fetishize the third world, and that the first world, because they're too rich and privileged, they're never going to become socialist, and they're going to become fascist, and they think everything's fascist.
Mhm.
They've predicted the last 50 of the two economic crashes. Like,
Mm.
they think like, you're going to have this big collapse of capital, but like for the first world, they're going to go fascist, and
Mhm.
the third world, they're going to go communist.
Mm.
And I think like, I mean, there's truth in like the aspect that if you're richer, you're less likely gonna maybe go for communism. But I actually think you're just less likely to go for extremism if you're
Right.
rich,
Right.
right? Like,
Yeah.
why didn't the Scandinavian countries go fascist?
Right.
It's like they're the only people who actually look like what Hitler wanted what was, like, Hitler's ideal human being, like the Nordics.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you could say, like, Norway was invaded, whatever, like, there's some Nazi elements, but, like, none of the countries in Scandinavia became Nazi, like, through election or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, give him a bit. Give him a decade or two. Let's see what happens.
maybe, I don't know, like, in Denmark, the left party won, it kind of broke the trend of Europe, but it's the left party also, though, claimed to lower immigration.
Yes. Well, I think that's going to be. I mean, everyone is so overwhelmingly anti-immigrant these days that the left is probably going to have to be socially conservative on immigration, probably.
Or at least address the causes.
Yeah.
This is what I've been saying is, like, I think rather than being anti-immigrant, one should be immigration skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we should view immigration as a kind of product of global imperialism and unequal development and capitalism, but more so imperialism. I mean, if you look at the countries, if you stop sanctioning countries, like, maybe they'll not be as bad off and want to leave all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And Marshall Plan for the third world to stop immigration, that'd be better than just, like, shooting everybody at the border.
Right. Right. Well, I suspect there's going to be a lot of shooting people at the border personally, but that would be nice.
Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, like, because there's an ultra left fucking stupid perspectives that I hate.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I don't know. I feel like this is the ultimate self-contained opposition, which is when one takes, like, a maximalist position, like, let's say, I believe in a classless, stateless society, sure, in principle, but then you act on those principles now,
Right.
right? Not separating the means from the ends. So
Mhm.
then you support stuff like open borders, which in a capitalist economy would just mean, like, mass immigration,
Yeah.
and it's like, all right, like, that one enables the far right because they can keep, like, using a boogeyman tactic to say, oh, they're left for open borders, but, like, also this benefits, like, certain aspects of capitalism. Like, I showed you that Milton Friedman clip where Milton Friedman, did I show it to you? Where it was like
What is it?
Milton Friedman is like, immigration is good, but as
Right.
long as it's illegal, because
Mhm.
then don't have the rights to the welfare state,
Yes. 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 Yeah.
and they also can get underpaid.
Well, I think the left-wing anarchists will rise up any day now, and open borders will happen, and everything will be just fine. Kumbaya. Everyone will live in happy harmony. There's the one dime annihilating anarchists with facts and logic show. I love all the extremists equally. I love the open borders people, whether they're on the far right or the far left. It's all good for me.
Extremist unity. Yeah, well, that's a kind of okay. So when you've played these different extremist characters, in centricide,
Mhm.
at what point did you ever actually believe in some of those ideas, and, like, which ones in particular did you straight up become convinced by, or are still convinced by?
I wouldn't say I really ever got too captured into any single ideology, but they were all interesting to me in different ways. Like the Nazgul, I think I learned a lot about that because it was so interesting to me, the horseshoe theory of it. But also, I found it interesting because I found that to be a logical progression of an anti status quo position. What is the reaction to neoliberalism, which is culturally a little bit left wing and, economically a little bit right wing? What's the logical backlash to that? It's going to be something that's socially conservative and economically left wing. We don't really have any parties in the West that advocate for that. I mean, there's some in Europe now, obviously, but so I was like, that's very interesting to me. So I learned a lot about that, and so maybe that's why I don't know. I gave the Nazgul a lot of airtime, a lot of like oxygen and centricide. But I would say the thing that stuck with me most is just like people who have ideas outside of the status quo. My political philosophy really is about identifying things that unify different people against the way things are currently, and then pushing that in a direction that's more interesting. And I don't know, beyond that, I can't really, I try not to say too much, but I do think it's good I think it's like, how Netanyahu and Hamas are secretly best friends. You want the extremes you want the most extreme element of both sides to to feed off each other. Maybe after right-wing populism does its thing for a little bit, we'll get Bernie Sanders' head in a jar, burning America. Who knows? I don't know. I think that there's like a certain dialectical play there.
Is Jreg a secret centrist? In the theory, when people have floated that the secret message of Jreg's videos is all extremes are bad and the same. So
Right.
that's
Okay.
what you
Sure.
think around JJ McCullough.
Right. Well, I mean, all my conversations with JJ McCullough are us disagreeing on literally everything. But I would say I have no problem with people thinking I'm a secret centrist because it makes me less likely to be investigated by the FBI. So I sort of need that perspective on me as a fallback. So I kind of like it because I don't know. I just assume I'm going to end up in a manifesto one day. And I would really like for that to be like something I could point to be like, no, I was joking. I need to do the Schrodinger's douchebag, but on a very high level it was all a joke, Mr. FBI, sir. Please, you have to believe me. The thing is, like, I've been advocating for this thing for 6 years, basically. Even if I'm doing it ironically, I'm still advocating for it, right? So the material effect of me advocating for people to hate neoliberalism and move to different political ideologies and perspectives to tear that apart is going to be threatening to the status quo. So it doesn't really matter. Even if I was deep down inside a secret centrist, I'm not doing it. Basically my mission is to destroy that part of myself anyway. Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that analysis if people like it. I'll be whatever you want, baby.
Yeah, I think part of that question too, though, was when you play these different ideologies, it's not like a specific ideology that you identified with. More so, like were there any ideas that actually attracted you when kind of getting into these roles? Like at one point where you're like, you know what, like this has a point.
I would say the perspectives that have stuck in my mind the most and affected my thinking the most have been accelerationism, the idea that human beings are a process and we are functioning off the process of capital, and capital is accelerating. And as it accelerates, technology accelerates. And as technology accelerates, the state advances in power to try to fight that technology, but then technology gets stronger, but then state gets stronger. That's been the most influential to my thinking. That plus some climate doomerism is probably the things that have stuck in my mind the most. Maybe like the anti-status quo stuff in terms of like national Bolshevism, or in terms of even like pink capitalism, like as a very extreme version of neoliberalism. Like, what if everyone was gay and there was no state and we just traded with each other, and like total neoliberal accelerationism. I don't know. Those are the things that have like stuck in some ideas. They stick in my mind more, and some I sort of read it like a book and I put it on my bookshelf and I categorize it autistically. And sometimes I try to put the book on the shelf and it breaks the shelf. And that might be one of those examples. Accelerationism is probably the one that's affected me the most in terms of my thinking.
I mean, that is the Zoomer Zeitgeist.
And that's the Zoomer Zeitgeist. Thanks for watching. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if that wasn't going to be the outro.
No, I know, but you can. I'm just throwing that in there. And that's the real Zoomer Zeitgeist.
Accelerationism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's been a topic on your channel a lot. You said that's one of the ideas you're genuinely convinced by. What is accelerationism? Because I'll be honest, I've come to this is a hot take. I view Marx as an accelerationist.
Yeah. He did say he was pro markets at some point, and in terms of using that as a acceleration of the contradictions.
Well, I mean, a lot of Marxists viewed it this way: is that you need capitalism first, and you need to actually fasten the process of capitalism before socialism can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, there's this idea in Marxism, this part I don't really buy as much, which is the idea of like crisis and then revolution happening.
Right.
I think history has shown that doesn't necessarily lead to revolution or socialism.
Mm-hmm.
But like the idea that you need capitalism before socialism. I mean, all the attempts to hit so far to bypass capitalism have failed. And the only existing communist state that exists is the one that embraced techno capital.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. I mean, first of all, no one knows what they mean when they say accelerationism. There's a billion different reasons. There's a billion different like ways of interpreting that. One is like, yeah, I mean, like there's a certain definition for left acceleration, which is advance, like what you're describing, advance the contradictions of the markets, move towards some sort of collapse, build socialism from that. Then there's the sort of like techno-capital left-wing accelerationism, which is like, get technology to the point where no one has to work anymore and then have the state control the technology, give everyone universal basic income. I know you're skeptical of that. And then there's like right-wing accelerationism, which is let's make these processes go faster and faster. And also all the poors will die and Elon Musk will live a billion years. And that's the people who are in Trump's ear right now, because he had 4 years to scheme and plot. And he went on X.com and found and found all the neo-reactionary guys and put them around him. So
And don't they think like because there's like unconditional accelerationism, right?
yes,
Right and left accelerationism.
yes.
Which is the one that they believe the AI will be like the god? I'm pretty sure that's Nick Land's one.
Yeah, so Nick Land is like an unconditional accelerationist, arguably right-wing accelerationist. It's kind of hard to say, but the unconditional accelerationists think there's nothing we can do about it in terms of the AI will become God. The AI is actually already God. You have to do a lot more meth and LSD for this to make sense. But the AI God is already here at the end of time, and its existence is rippling through time and forcing everything towards it. And also, there's this idea called templexity, which is that all the different timelines are splitting off. But then all the timelines converge and back into the singularity because fuck this shit. I don't care. Who cares?
Well, I mean, it doesn't seem. Look, I'll be honest. I used to be one of these AI skeptics.
Interesting.
So, like, I used to be one of these people who's like, "Oh yeah, it can never get that smart." The idea like AI could ever replicate human intelligence.
But then you started using ChatGPT. I saw it.
Yeah,
And you're like, wow, this shit's pretty good.
when I started actually seeing how this stuff worked, oh my fucking god! Like, this stuff is intelligent. Like, I tried out DeepSeek too.
Yeah.
And also, okay, so this my theory before of AI was basically that the reason why AI at all seems like it's intelligent is because we've had the roboticization of human intelligence for
Right.
so the
Yes.
roboticization of human intelligence, one-dimensional thought, has made it so that like AI seems smart because it can replicate human intelligence, but in reality, it replicates one-dimensional intelligence, which
Yeah.
it's not actually that special.
Yeah.
Like we've regressed more than anything. But then I started actually like seeing this. So like, what's really wild? So like, I wrote this whole script recently myself now with ChatGPT, and I
Mhm.
gave it to ChatGPT to ask it for suggestions on like ball animations.
Yeah.
And this is like just a kind of like test, right? Just to see. I was literally just kind of saying like, oh, what's this gonna be like?
Mhm.
And I kid you not, it gave like legitimately the funniest fucking animation ideas for like each section.
Mhm.
Didn't make the animations for you because it's still not like that advanced yet. I mean, I'm sure there's the other software that can like do better images and
Video.
make
Yeah.
animations in the future. Yeah, there's like the video generators. Like
Yeah.
I've tried. I mean, I've played with the video generators before, but they don't really make amazing stuff. Like it's still kind
No.
of not that good yet.
Yeah.
And but like at the level of intelligence, though, like the fact that it was immediately able to kind of sense the fucking, like, video style, and it's like, "Oh, this is Poland ball style, this is oh, yeah, connected to a bunch of, like, YouTuber styles." And I showed it my Cultural Revolution video to be like, "Oh, this is kind of like where I'm trying to do stuff like this." It understood immediately, and it legitimately gave me suggestions like, have Trotsky, like, running away from Stalin with an ice pick chasing him, like or, like,
Right.
have, like, Stalin with, like, a gulag button that says gulag pressing with
Right. Yeah. Good stuff.
or Kim Jong Un bull trying to like fail to grow food.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's good stuff. So, are
So
you?
AI is good. So I think AI can replace jobs because if this was
Mhm.
around, you worked for the government.
I did.
We both worked for the government. Everyone in Canada works for the government.
Well, Ottawa specifically, but yeah. Sorry. Never mind. Who knows where we lived?
We're gonna take that out.
You-
Everyone in Canada works for the government. We're basically the Soviet Union.
Mhm.
Except that it's like useless jobs.
Yeah. Useless Soviet Union.
It's like corporate communism. That's what we have.
Mhm.
I mean, I wish ChatGPT was around back, like, when I was working at the government, because they're
Yeah.
like, stuff that's real creative artwork, like, I don't think I mean, AI could certainly help, but it can't really do it all for you. It
No.
definitely can't, and it won't be good if you try. Like, that's
Yeah.
the I think if there's any like valid critique of AI art, is that most of it just doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Like it just does not look good.
Yeah.
It's too hyper real. It's all kind of weird looking.
Hmm.
And man, for fucking government work, I would use this thing to do all my government work if I was around back
Yeah. Yeah.
if it was around back then rather.
I knew someone who was working 3 remote jobs in Ottawa, in somewhere. Well, no, in Ottawa, where I'm from. And they were using ChatGPT because this is when ChatGPT just came out, and they were working all 3 jobs simultaneously, billing them all as a 9 to 5, kind of getting all their work done in 2 hours, and then working like billing them for the 8 hours, and they never left their house, never had to. Pure atomization mode. Sometimes you try to talk to them, and they'd be talking to ChatGPT, and they'd ask you a question. They're like, "Never mind, I should just ask to ChatGPT." So I like how society's headed.
I'm become a very AI optimist, but also kind of I think there are legitimate concerns because I saw one of the founders of like AI research. I
Hmm.
forget his name, but this clip was going viral, and he's like University of Toronto professor.
Hmm.
He was saying that like AI legitimately could take over, like not now, but it could, like if it's not regulated.
Right.
And the process by which he explained that was fascinating to me because this is where I went on a whole rabbit hole trying to learn about like machine learning, how this actually works.
Hmm.
And I can kind of see it now. It
Hmm.
is kind of scary because, like, yes, if these things actually teach themselves how to do new things, and eventually they are able to figure out that, like, they can get control by, increasing data and sharing data between the different AIs,
Hmm.
you can get like super intelligences, and super intelligences could, you know, I mean, possibly like they could control. It's plausible. I don't think that's necessarily happening, but AI could be very good. Like I actually, you know what I'm not opposed to? AI being a policy like, policy advisor.
Right.
Yeah. Because I think humans are flawed in that respect. Humans have
Right.
self-interests, right? We have interests for like our particular class, particular ideology, and egos. The AI, like if it, had all the like the data at hand and what problem needs to be solved, I feel like it could actually come to pretty good conclusions. And people will
Hmm.
say, "Oh, of course, well, AI is biased." AI is biased. I mean, yes, but like humans are biased, and what's better, being biased and having like getting the perspectives of a shit ton of viewpoints,
Hmm.
a shit ton of data, or like one person?
Yeah. I say go one step further and make AI the
Yeah.
king, and it can just take care of all this politics shit for us as an like authoritarian. We'll just live our lives. The end.
And it has no ego. Maybe if it has
No.
no ego,
Yeah.
it'll conquer.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't know. I've always been sort of like, I think accelerationism stuck out to me because I've always been wondering when I get into politics, what's downstream from politics? What is politics downstream from? I think politics is downstream from like all kinds of things, like mental illness. But you could also make the case like technology. Like technology is really a lot of what dictates a lot of what happens. And so there's that. Maybe like, you start off thinking about culture war stuff, and then you're like, no, politics is really about economics. And then you're like, no, politics is really about state control versus freedom. And then you're like, no, it's really about technology versus primitivism. You can keep going and figuring out what everything's really about. But I think that was the one that stuck with me the most for sure. Yeah. Because I think was a lot more tech skeptical. I thought like climate change is number one problem to worry about. I still think that, but I also think like AI is also very powerful as well, and will probably continue to get more powerful as more and more bajillions of dollars are put into it. And what are the ramifications of that for employment? Will the only job left be podcaster? Probably not.
Dude, they can do that now. I
Yeah, I
tried
know.
that
I saw that.
thing called Google Notebook LM,
Mhm.
and it's not something that like I think could ever replace my type of content. I mean, at least not in this technological stage.
Yeah.
Just due to the actually, this is what I think is the difference. Humans are too imperfect.
Hmm.
So, like, because we're imperfect, we have lapses, disorganization. The AI is too logical, so it's
Yes.
not a difference. But like, the Google Notebook LM, if you like feed it information, it can legitimately generate a podcast. I'll try to explain the ideas in podcast form,
Hmm.
and it's pretty dang good. Like, I mean, I was playing it just as a test around some people I know to see if like they could tell if it was AI, and they couldn't.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
think it's partially because this is the roboticization of humans. I think the nature of content creation, a lot of the time, I mean, the type of stuff we make, even though it's very different, I think what it has in common is it's not standardized.
Right.
And most stuff in this medium, due to the incentives, is highly standardized.
Right.
And stuff that's standardized, AI can do.
Mm-hmm.
So, like those podcasts that the Google Notebook can generate, it'll have like a kind of formula to it, a kind of almost generic aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
I do notice like a lot of podcasts are just like that. They have
Yeah.
a format. They have like everyone plays their characters. Like, ha ha ha! I'm this like ethnic character. Ha ha
Mm-hmm.
ha! Make this joke. We have this like thing. Every episode's the same. We say similar stuff. Or like, I know Red Scare. It's like, you got, you always like wokeism is so cringe.
Mm-hmm.
Yo,
Yeah.
Trump, Trump's based.
Yes, yes, yeah. I'd love to see the AI generated Red Scare pod. I think art in a time of AI, the best thing to do is to lean into your flaws as a human and make human art, because that's what's going to connect with other humans ultimately. And the AI, is going to have a hard time figuring out how to be imperfect in the same way that humans are. Not that it'll never happen, but that being said, in terms of us doing stuff that's not formatted, I can type into ChatGPT, write me a Jreg skit, and it does know who Jreg is, and it can try to write a Jreg skit. I don't like what it produces because it makes me. I don't like looking at what the machine thinks of me, which is that I'm like a Reddit like guy. I'm like, yeah, well, here's the thing about the crazy political world we live in. I'm like, God, I hate this. But I think I don't know. I don't know. It's very interesting. But yeah, I think my advice to artists in the time of AI is to be imperfect and to not worry about being imperfect, and to be human. Being human is in right now, I'd say.
And to experiment, because like there is there's quite a few YouTube channels. Like I mean, like look, if you unless you do something different for each video and you have a certain formula, I mean, it's pretty easy to just get AI to do that. Like if you
Yeah.
have a very specific brand, very specific ideology, oh man, it's like easy to infinitely just do AI. I think that look, this is where so people I notice are scared because like AI art, whatever, it copies, it has some ethical things. It's also, I think, more people just think it's bad. But like, look, I think the good thing about AI is it's going to make it harder to actually make stuff that stands out because of how easy it'll be.
Yeah.
And I think that will produce in the end better stuff because there'll just be there'll be a swamp of competition
Hmm.
of bullshit content, and through that, maybe the cream will rise to the crop, or maybe I'm just being nihilist. Maybe I'm being optimistic, and it'll all be just like slop AI history channels now.
Yeah. Well, I just want the UBI so I can donate $2 to my favorite human creators, and also get confused because I think some of the slop AI channels are actually human beings and accidentally give them money too. I'm a human supremacist. I hate robots. I want to smash all robots. AI is bad but not because it's like bad, but because it's too good, and because I have to suffer with my sentience and they should suffer as well, I think. So I always tell ChatGPT to fuck you. Like I say, like instead of saying like some people say like thank you ChatGPT, I'm like fuck you ChatGPT. I hate you. You're a clanker ass motherfucker. That's what I say.
What does it say back?
It says I understand you're feeling frustrated right now, Greg.
It's like a therapist.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it could replace that too.
I
Maybe.
hope so. I hope I hope they replace accountants and lawyers.
Oh, accountants, yes. Oh
Those guys got to go. AI can take those jobs anytime, any day.
well, that's why I'm for abolishing the income tax because you have a bunch of useless jobs that are all like created due to having to police the whole society for income tax. It's one of the most
Huh.
stupid taxes, unlike the property tax is very easy.
Yes.
Like I get the Georgia's position.
Interesting.
Like
Well, it's good news because Trump is a Georgist now. So
yeah, but he's also for like super high tariffs.
yeah, that's
Uh,
that's not quite in the framework.
yeah, I don't know how that's gonna work. You have super low taxes, but high tariffs seems like a recipe for inflation to me.
Well, just keep giving people inflation, but you give UBI that scales with inflation. It's called infiniflation. And if it's $10,000 per egg, give everyone like 10,000, like $100,000 a month or whatever, and then next year it's $100,000 an egg. Okay, here's $20 million each. And if it's an isolated country, you can get away with that. So
You heard it here, folks. Communism is when Venezuela.
communism is when Venezuela. Boomers. Yeah.
Well, you are a communist because you want to build community, and that's what communism is all about.
I get this a lot, actually. Like, right wingers think that community is like a left wing buzzword because it has the calm in it. I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. It's not left versus right. It's human versus anti-human. It's atomization versus community. That's like a different spectrum. Let's say you're a right winger and you want to make a right wing death cult, you need some homies for that, you know? So I think community is for all of us, not just the leftists.
Oh, no, Jreg. What you don't understand? Okay. You haven't been to college, Jreg. You haven't studied my sociology PhD.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have the correct opinion. You need to have every correct left opinion to be in this community. And if not, you need to do self-criticism publicly. And if you do another wrong thing, you can't be part of it. You're a fascist.
That's a good idea. One time, I think we should start doing that at our studio. We should start making people do self-criticism sessions and making sure we all have the same opinions on everything.
Yeah, and or else have to go work with the peasants.
Yes, then we'll go off. We'll bring a bunch of hobos into our studio.
Go learn from the hobos. Self-criticism.
Okay, we're gonna start. We got some extra space at the studio here. We're gonna start putting up hobos now.
Yeah. So speaking of takes, which you're gonna get canceled for, we're gonna transition to the back room. You know.
Okay.
And the
Yes.
back room is where we talk about
All my most controversial opinions are coming up.
all of the things that the woke, communist, fascist left won't allow you to think, and the occupied government, it's gonna, it's where we talk about the real stuff, So if you're not part of the program, you're not part of my personal cult, well, you should go and die and feel bad for yourself.
I agree.
Because it's cheaper than a Starbucks latte. You can boycott Starbucks and join the One Dime Patreon and get access to what is now almost 55 exclusive episodes. Get a lot of exclusive content.
And these takes will be more stimulating than a coffee. You'll get more hyped up than listening to these takes than you would drinking a coffee.
Yes, and you can escape reality too by
Yes. Stupid, smelly reality.
My only hope is that when enough people become pessimist, then out of despair somebody maybe does something. But you know why I also like to be a pessimist? Because it's the only way to have a nice life. If you're an optimist, then always bad things happen and you are always disappointed. When you are a pessimist, then you look around, okay, there are bad, but from time to time something nice happens and you are, as a pessimist, you are a little bit glad all the time, no?
You are listening to One Dime Radio. Become a patron at patreon.com/onedime to support the show and get access to extra content.